All right, on this episode of Bouts Talking Bouts, very excited to be talking with an individual who certainly had one of the big standout performances at UFC 270, which transpired on January the 22nd there, a unanimous decision victory over Raoni Barcelos, and very excited to be talking to Victor Henry on the show today. How's your day going so far there, man?
Hey, it's good, man. Just had me a big old breakfast. I tagged DC in my in my food tour since my fight. So let's see if DC gets back to me. Hopefully, me and him can have a sit down lunch or dinner. See who can eat more.
I was gonna say, what's like the ideal breakfast? Like, what do you really send her for to kind of celebrate and like fully indulge there?
Usually, I go to this place over here in Fullerton, Placentia area, and it's called Nest. And the cook over there has he's half Mexican, and he has his American Mexican inspiration for his dishes and everything, and he's got a really good chilaquiles, and his carnitas is actually really good. So that dish is just, I mean, that dish is delicious in general, but the way he makes it is just, it's over the top.
Yeah, I was gonna say it seems like you really enjoyed the, spoils of war, as it were. Like, I think you had a post where like the go-go curry was something you were sending her for and whatnot, and like the Odin dog and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, go-go curry. I mean, it's a shame that there's only like, I think, one or two locations here in the United States. There's one in Texas and one in New York, but of course, all the other locations are in Japan, and those are few and far in between, but. I don't really have access to Japan right now, so hopefully soon.
Yeah, was that one of the cool aspects of fighting with Ryzen too? It's like a little tiny aside. Like, I imagine there was like the primary focus on getting to compete within that rich Japanese MMA scene, but probably doesn't hurt that there's good food options too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I didn't know this until like my second or third time in Japan, but apparently Japan has like the second most Michelin star rated restaurants outside of like Italy or something like that. And it's crazy how deep their food their food knowledge is, and just especially in outside of just Japanese food, like Italian food and French food. They get down over there, The thing that does kind of suck about traveling when you fight is that usually they give you a week to be there, so the first few days, of course, you're cutting weight and you're focusing on your fight, and then finally you fight and you go out that night. Well, you go out that night after your fight, and usually the places are closed, so you have kind of half a day in order to really go around and enjoy the place where you're at and eat before you got to, take off for your, for your flight. I mean, you could extend your stay there, but then now it's coming out of your pocket, not the pocket of the promoter.
Yeah, you talk about the record amounts there and stuff like that. I mean, it seemed like you guys set a record amount there in the last fight there with 315 significant strikes. I was seeing SportsKeeda put out an article saying it was the most during a 3-round bantamweight encounter in UFC history. Like, how do you feel when you hear that there, that you have like that kind of benchmark sort of moment there?
It doesn't really surprise me. I mean, the style. I mean, styles do make fights. Raoni Barcelos, he's not one to run away from a challenge, so he's the one that usually is pressing forward. I fought on a back foot a lot of that fight, but I was also countering a lot. So, I knew that if I wanted to stand in front of Raoni Barcelos, that would be a tough fight for me. So I had to be within range for him to actually throw, but not so far away to where he's just walking me down the entire time, and I don't have the ability to throw. So, especially with my boxing coach Jamal, the work rate that we operate under is, to me it's insane. To him it's normal. So, and he's a almost 70-year-old man, and he's in better shape than I am, I think.
The whole thing kind of curious in a lot of regards too. I appreciate you giving me that level of analysis in terms of like the stylistic breakdowns, but I found a lot of the lead-in components kind of curious, and even the fallout too, because I was seeing the interview you did with Mike Heck, and he was saying you were the biggest underdog on the card, but I was like, kind of confused because I've followed your efforts in like Ryzen, Deep, Pancrase, etc. So didn't necessarily have that perception coming in. I was more like, oh, this will be like a barn burner kind of fight. Like both of these are well matched kind of guys. Like, is it a curious kind of thing from your perspective? Like, I guess how sometimes like UFC-centric some of the coverage and surrounding perceptions could be, because yeah, you being the biggest underdog is very curious when you actually like do the, you know, backgrounding and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was what it was. You know, as far as I mean, I know you comment on it, but I comment. You know, I told a lot of, you know, media outlets where it's like, yo, like, you know, you have the guys who are MMA fans like yourself, and a lot of actually independent MMA journalists. The MMA fans, they watch MMA from around the world, from different organizations, from Ryzen, of course, the UFC. You know, you have ACA over in Russia. You know, RCC, and then even just the local shows. You know, like over here we have Lights Out. You know, Lights Out FC. We have OC Fight Club, and you have those kinds of organizations everywhere. LFA. You know, they're everywhere, but there are some. Well, I shouldn't say some, but there's a lot of MMA media outlets who only pay attention to the top 15 in the UFC, or they pay attention to the you know, the Michael Venom Pages of Bellator, or you know, the, you know, whoever's related to Khabib in Russia. You know, it's like those are very, very few people actually pay attention to, you know, to talent around the world. You know, and it's kind of, I mean, I understand it because it's not exactly the talking points, and it's not what's making the most money. All of a sudden, you get a guy like me who comes in from fighting around the world, and you know, coming into the UFC, and you know, people were correct in that Raoni Barcelos is some son bitch. You know, he's a you know, half of his wins come by TKO or KO, and he's only got 2 losses, and one of those losses was what you know, there's a lot of people arguing that Raoni Barcelos won that UFC fight, you know. So to sweep me under the rug like that, kind of a little. I mean, I feel a little bit disrespectful, but at the same time, it's lazy journalism on their part. You know, it's like, well, how about you just do the research and see who I fought, see the level of competition that I've actually been competing against, and you know, it's not like you just because you give Raoni his props doesn't mean you take away from mine. You know, it's just like, hey, Raoni's a great fighter because of this. Victor's a great fighter because of this. It's going to be a good matchup. Rather than, oh well, Victor hasn't fought top competition. Well, says who? Says who? The guy at the guy who's got no stake in the game. You know, who's got no I wouldn't say actual experience, because of course they've been watching fights and everything. But like, yeah, like, I fought a lot of people around the world. So has Raoni. And just because Raoni has had more eyes on him does not necessarily mean that he's going to, you know, have his way with me as everybody suggested he was. I mean, I've heard this one interview where it's like, when it comes to striking, I got Raoni. When it comes to wrestling, I got Raoni. When it comes to submission, I got Raoni. It's like, really? Like, I have nothing? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. Just no attributes at all from certain people's perspectives. But, I mean, you had some really great walkout music, too. If they gave out bonuses for that, I mean, you probably would have got the nod there, coming out to some Goatwhore there. That was cool.
Hey, you know, like, I'm friends with the guys in Goatwhore, you know, thanks to Josh. And, you know, they got some ripping music. And, unfortunately, they almost didn't let that song happen. They sent me an email and saying that the song wasn't being approved. After questioning why and everything, we got that song approved, and I'm glad to do it for the metal fans.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what was the issue with it getting approved? Like, did they relay that to you at all?
They didn't relay the exact issue. They were trying to keep it family friendly and whatever, and I was like, well, this is. I mean, I understand. Like, had they come at me with the rationale of, listen, this is going to be aired on ESPN, and since ESPN is a subsidiary of Disney, we can't have crazy music like that. I would understand that. You know, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, they got a point. But if they're going to follow that line of logic, then they have to follow that line of logic with everybody, especially when it comes to songs that, you know, that promote demoralizing women, or, you know, drug culture, or racial slurs, or things like that. You know, not to call out any what's the word I'm looking at? Not to call out any genre of music, but because Goatwhore is a fast-paced band, does not. I mean, no cussing in that. There was no racial slurs in that. There was no drug. References or racial slurs. So they would have to have given me a really good reason why my music is not approved, but then a lot of these other songs are.
Yeah, I would think it would just be like saying the name on TV. Like if one of the announcers happened to like slip up and it's like, oh yeah, a good tune from Goatwhore. Like maybe that's it.
Yeah. Like I said, it would have to be a really good reason. You know, where I would be like, you know what, there's no argument against that. But if they say, oh no, it's because of the music, it's like, well, no, it's not because of the music, because you're allowing all this other music, but not mine. That just seems weird to me.
Yeah, but it seems like the crossover with like, Josh Barnett and like all the metal and stuff like that. It seems like there's a few instances of that. Like you were at an Every Time I Die show at one point there, and it seemed like you and Josh were getting out there in the pit and having a good time and everything. And I saw recently they were looking to dissolve there, so I was like, that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, they were supposed to have a show here in March in the Orange County area, and Andy, the guitarist for Every Time I Die, he released something, and I was bummed. I grew up with Every Time I Die, and being able to meet them because of Josh was a real huge honor, and hopefully they get it worked out. They're a great band and everything, but if it's time, then it's time. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly been a lot of bonding me and my coach Josh because of metal music. Metal music, fast cars, and punching people in the face. It seems to me like we have a lot in common.
Yeah, no, that's what it's all about, man. And I also think it's cool just also being a pro wrestling fan, like Andy Williams crossing over into like the AEW ranks and has been doing well with all that there. And obviously Josh Barnett does really well with his like blood sport shows and stuff like that. Would something like that hold any interest for you at some point, like some kind of pro wrestling kind of, situation, like getting out there and, articulating yourself in that kind of framework there?
But it's funny. As far as Andy Williams goes, I remember training with him over at CSW because anytime. So of course Andy and Josh are friends. Andy is obviously into wrestling, like you just said. He's in the AEW now, but he originally didn't really want to pursue it. He was a fan of it. He liked kind of doing like smaller shows and everything. And Josh was like, "Yo, like you got it. Like you just need to learn a couple things, and I think we think you can go far." And anytime Josh trains wrestlers or fighters, of course the fighters, they got to do their fighting stuff. But a lot of the times you have wrestlers that want to come in and learn from Josh because of the strong style. He actually puts them in fight practice. So he makes them wrestle for real. He makes them do submission grappling with the fight team for real. They might have a different skill set and everything, but he makes them do these things for real because in Josh's philosophy, you have to actually know how to fight in order to be a pro wrestler. You can't just go in there and do the WF or E style of just jump off the ropes. Things like there's an element of storytelling within the match, a wrestling match, but there's also the physicality part where you need to be a physical person. You need to actually be able to whoop somebody's butt just in case somebody, tries you. As far as me getting into pro wrestling, I told Josh, listen, man, if I ever thought about doing that, I would need to learn that side of it, the pro wrestling side of it, because I come at it from, of course, a purely combative angle. So I know how to fight. I don't know how to do the storytelling within the match. I don't know how to sell moves and things like that. So I would need to train to do specifically that rather than fighting.
Yeah, and I think that shows a thoughtfulness that you're even talking about those components there. But I guess just anecdotally, I've heard different people talk about how there's that like adaptability component in a lot of situations where if you have that like amateur wrestling familiarity, it gives that like positional kind of awareness. So I figured like pro wrestling would be something you could cross over into. I mean, maybe more easy than like a layman getting into it kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so of course, another one of Josh's students, Shayna Baszler.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously she's doing really well. I mean, there's a lot of students out there of Josh that are doing really well in the professional wrestling aspect of things. But even then, like, I remember watching Shayna in smaller shows because, you know, I go out to support my teammate. I remember watching her in smaller shows, and, you know, there was when she first started pro wrestling, there was a lot of pushback against her because she came from professional fighting. So it was kind of like, well, this is professional wrestling, not professional fighting. So it was kind of like mixing oil and water at that point, where it's just like it just wasn't happening. And then the more work she put in, the more and more she got accepted, and now look where she's at.
Yeah, sometimes there is that kind of like curve when someone's like crossing over between the worlds, but I just feel like there was so much overlap there. So I don't know. I guess because I'm into both things, maybe not as much of a, you know, perceptual thing for me there, but something I also wanted to get some insights on there, just talking about the connectivity with like Josh and metal and all of those facets. It seems like you were able to be part of an Amon Amarth video. Like, what was all that like?
Oh, that was pretty legit. So Josh hits me up. He goes, "Hey, you want to be part of a music video?" I said, "It depends. I ain't gonna shake my butt for Ja Rule." So he goes, "Yeah, dude, it's an Amon Amarth video." Blah blah. I was like, "Heck yeah!" So went over there, and it was me and another one of Josh's training partners, Eric Hammer, who's also a professional wrestler, and he's got his own gym out here. But yeah, so we go out to the Hollywood area, and they paint me up like a demon, and I got real sensitive eyes. Like, I mean, my eyes are great, but people start touching them. Ugh. Yeah. So they managed to get one contact in, and I was like, I think I'm done, because my other eye kept like jamming shut. It didn't want to accept the contact, but yeah, we were there for a few hours, and we got to hang out with Amon Amarth, and we dressed up as demons, and here comes Josh dressed as a Viking, and he's chopping heads off, and there's limbs flying everywhere, and you know, that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool, man. And then I got to show my mom, and I was like, hey, my mom is you know, she raised me to be super Christian, you know, so of course listening to heavy metal, my mom's like, what is this music? What is this music? And all she hears is the drums and the guitar. There's no lyrics yet. And I was like, listen, Mom, they're just thinking about Viking stuff. Don't worry about it. Just watch the video. If you want, I could turn the volume down. So she goes, oh, dressed up like a demon. I was like, yeah, they do. Yes, they do. So that was actually pretty fun. I got to meet a nice group of people, and you know, other heavy metal fans, and it was a fun time all around.
Yeah, well, that's really cool to hear, man. I mean, definitely a cool thing to have on the resume for sure. But different posts I've seen from you over the last like few years, like there's been instances of you like getting in work at like American Top Team and stuff like that. But seems like you've been getting in work at some other spaces as of late. There, it seems like California Mixed Martial Arts and Fitness, UWF, USA. Has that more been the primary base of operations for this one, or able to still kind of cross train a bit at ATT? Like, what was the dynamic like in that regard?
ATT, originally I was brought in by Dustin Poirier. So Dustin Poirier, I used to have a training partner named Trent Moe, and he's from Louisiana. But Dustin Poirier, another Louisiana boy, hits up my friend Trent in order to go train with Kyoji Horiguchi for his fight against Tenshin Nasukawa. It was a kickboxing fight.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, Trent couldn't make it, so Trent referred Dustin to me. So Dustin put me in contact with those guys over at ATT, and you know, we arranged it so I can go out there and train, so I can just be specifically Kyoji's training partner. Well, it worked out perfectly because I have another training partner, Pedro Munoz, who used to train with Chad George over at California Mixed Martial Arts. So, you know, originally, you know, I remember, it was funny because a long time ago, Pedro and I were supposed to fight. Back when we had, like, he was 4-0 and I was 2-0 or 3-0, and we were supposed to fight for respecting the cage. And then years later, we ended up being training partners over at California Mixed Martial Arts, which is pretty funny. Eventually, of course, Pedro Munoz moved out to ATT, and then I ended up seeing him out there, which was pretty cool. So ATT. I have a lot of friends over there, which is good because if I ever move out to Florida, because everybody's exiting California right now, if I ever move out to Florida, I know I got a second home over there. Originally, the UWF team, we were training here at La Mirada, the UFC gym here in La Mirada. We had to deal with them where, of course, Josh is training there and we're all training there. We would advertise for UFC gym La Mirada as a fight team. We were UWF USA, but we were fighting out of the UFC gym in La Mirada, giving them a lot of love and shares on Instagram, right? But unfortunately, the pandemic hit, and they had to follow the regulations of California. And eventually, when things started opening up again, they switched management, so the deal that we had with them didn't carry over. So we had been training with the CMMA team for a long time, over CMMA with Chad George. We had been training with them for a long time, and we were just cross training with them. But then when the one door closed, Chad George took us all in, and now we just formed one team of UWF USA and CMMA. So we're basically just operating out of there now.
Yeah, I was going to say you've gotten to get in work at a lot of spaces throughout this, martial arts as a lifestyle kind of journey. It seems like it's been quite the, path since the, Southgate days at the Taekwondo Center.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, it's funny because I go every Wednesday to Southgate to visit my mom, and where I just be in the area, and the Taekwondo Center in which I started, it has changed so much. I mean, it's not even a Taekwondo center. I mean, it was a community center, and there was Taekwondo mats inside one room, and I would be there every Tuesday, Thursday, just training, Taekwondo because it was up the block, and now it's some sort of it's a community center still, but I think it's all gated up because nobody even uses it anymore. It's crazy. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. The Taekwondo Center actually moved to Hollydale, and I don't even know if they're operating anymore. But it's been crazy because I'm just thinking, man, like I started there, and then of course it moved to Hollydale, which is like another city right next to Southgate. Over there, then of course I was training at the Gracie Academy, and then training over at Legends, and then training over at CSW, and now here at CMMA. It's been a long journey, and but it's been a fruitful one because I'm able to see so many different aspects of martial arts and how martial arts has touched so many different lives in so many different ways.
Yeah, it's been a fun story to follow, and it was cool to see that, most recent chapter kind of unfurl there at UFC 270, man. But I want to be mindful of your time and just really appreciative of you coming on the show and giving some insights, but just, curious if there's anything you might want to add kind of as a parting thought as we're wrapping up here, Victor.
Yeah, dude. I appreciate you taking your time out of your day and giving me an interview, man. I try to do as many of these as possible, only because I know that, I have to, I was once the little guy, where nobody, I started somewhere, and, I want to help everybody out that I can, and how long have you been growing your hair, man? Because I'm looking at this picture, I'm thinking, dang, he's got an epic flow going.
It's all about the lettuce. Yeah, I mean, you got some great lettuce too, so I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate that, man.
But yeah, I'm going to really appreciate whenever the news of the next bout pops off there. Just cool journey to follow along with, and really awesome to see you integrated into the UFC bantamweight division, a really deep category, and yeah, just bolstering it even further with the skills you got. So yeah, really appreciate you coming on, man, to reiterate, and hopefully you have a great rest of your day, Victor.
Thanks for having me on.